many of you were able to get a copy of Elsie Jane's book. Many of you do have, and I went to get it, to go over a few things, and couldn't find it. I was going to say, wait a minute, I bought 2 copies. Called my daughter, she has one, called my son. Oh, I took it to New Orleans. Anyway, I pulled a copy. I did go through most of it. Are there any available, Dorothy?
Not right now. We hope to have some. When I get some printed, I will have some in the church library and the public library and who knows what else.
When she gets them printed, again, they will be in the church library and in the public library, so you all can get a copy. Okay, Elsie?
Yes.
We are so glad you're here today. So many people have been, well, you can see from the crowd we have, how many people are excited about having you tell us things. And I'm going to tell them, I've known Elsie, I think, my whole life, very close to my whole life. My mother adored her. They were good friends, and my mom was, it seemed to be in everything. And she got Elsie, I don't know how happy Elsie was about it at the time, but she got her into PTA, and she got her selling tickets for community concerts, and she had her doing this, and had her doing that, and she kept her busy. And anyway, I loved her. She's just amazing. I do know that on my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, Elsie was helping us, and we have a pond behind our house. John, my youngest, was 12 years old, and he was dressed for the day in a suit and a tie, and I think it's probably the first time he ever had a suit on. But he kept looking at the lake, and he knew he had cousins there, and before long, he had 4 boys out there fishing. And he went after one of the fish, and he came up, and he is mud from head to toe. And Elsie caught him at the back door. And I don't know how she did it, but she got him to change clothes. She took his suit, she got it washed, dried, and back on him, and I didn't know what happened until afterwards. It was amazing. So she's just great. So I know you have questions, so if you have one, stick your hand up. Elsie, are there stories you want to tell us to start?
Yeah, I didn't understand what you said.
Is there something that you want to tell?
Is there a story you want to tell us to begin with?
Where do you want me to start?
I know there are a lot of years in there.
Most of you know I was born in Paris, and I've lived here most of my life, except the first 5 years I was married. And then my father talked my husband into moving to Paris. And so I've been here ever since. And that was during World War II. And I had 2 children. And they loved Paris. They thought it was the greatest place in the world. Some days I wasn't so sure they were right. But I stayed because my father was not very well, and I wanted to make sure he was well taken care of, and there were not nursing homes to put people in at the time. My father lived. The doctor says if somebody doesn't take care of him, he won't live over 6 months. But he lived 6 years after I got here, which made me very happy. But then we were going to move back to Champaign because that was my husband's hometown. He got a job there and was looking for a house. And all of a sudden, my children said, "We don't want to go. We want to stay in Paris." And at the time, there were publicizing the drug problem in Champaign. It hadn't hit Paris yet. And we thought, well, this is a better place to raise children. And they were, well, I was ready for high school at the time. So we settled down and stayed. After that, my children grew up and they left me. My husband worked a lot, long hours, and the children were off to college. And I was sitting there wondering, what am I going to do with the rest of my life, which I did not expect to last this long. So I started looking in the paper, and we had a daily paper at the time, and everything that said the public is invited, I went to. So there must be something, somewhere I can go, because I can't sit here and look at these four walls. So, and then we had neighbors down the street, the Ewings, and they belonged First Methodist Church, and whenever there was anything going on at the church, they invited me to go with them. In fact, they took me. I could hardly say no. One of them had been my first grade teacher for a whole month. When I got ready to start the school, we lived next door to Sanford School, which is now Carolyn and Wentz School. And I had been watching that teacher for 3 years, knowing she's going to be my first grade teacher. And then I went to school, and after I'd been in school a month, I came down with an attack of arthritis, which I still have, in my hands and feet. I couldn't go to school. And then on March 1st, we moved to East Wood Street. And that's where everybody thinks I still live. But I don't know. Everything that I got involved with got me some new friends, made me think Paris isn't such a bad place after all. And then my father had brought us up to think we were not supposed to work outside the home. You're supposed to take care of your own family and not somebody else's. But after he died, I thought it would be nice if I made some money. So I got a job cleaning a house. In fact, it was Bud and Martha Colson's house. And I must have lasted a whole month. And I kept getting sick and kept getting sick. Dr. James said, if you want to see your children, you better stop that job and get something where you don't have to dust, where you aren't exposed to any dust. They had just invented penicillin, and he gave me penicillin, my nose broke out. So I quit that job. I didn't have another one. But so I decided I can stay home, I can sew, I can knit. I like to knit, so I had lots of knit things. I got so many Afghans now, I don't know where they are. Somebody moved me when I moved out of my house, and I didn't get to help them, so I have no idea where anything is. Now, is that right?
Still needs to go.
This part here is
Let's do this.
But I could backtrack to when my children started to school, and David was in the 2nd grade, and they had Thanksgiving vacation, and he got pneumonia. He was in the 2nd grade, so the doctor put him to bed, and he didn't get up for 6 months. So I was glad I did stay at home, because we had lots of fun. He wasn't that sick after the pneumonia cleared up, but his temperature wouldn't stay in the right degree. And the doctor wanted him to stay in bed. He had tests for every childhood disease we could think of. And a lot of children had rheumatic fever at the time. But he didn't test positive for any kind of disease. And the doctor decided to take his tonsils out. I don't know why they take his tonsils out when they're not sore, but they did. It didn't do a bit of good. He still was running the temperature, so the doctor said, let him get up and let him stay up. And so he got over that little spell, but every disease that came along, he got. If David had measles, Dorothy had mumps at the same time. They did that until they got through all the childhood diseases. And then they finally got to go to school regularly. David was not interested in school. I think he thought teachers were his enemies. He never paid any attention to them. But when he was out of high school, or almost out of high school, he took tests for scholarship at the University of Illinois, and they were giving away 4 scholarships, and he came in first, the 5th. He never got first anything. But evidently he had listened in school, even though the teachers despaired. They didn't think he was learning anything. He was interested in building radios. And Mr. whoever ran Jones's store asked him, what do you give boys, 6-year-old boys, for Christmas that can't do anything? And he said, he sold me this radio kit. And David couldn't get it to work, so when he got out of bed, he started going to the library and getting all the books about how to make radios. When he was 16, he knew how to make a radio work. And television had just gotten popular, and Eversold had a store that sold appliances and radios and television sets. And one day I bought something in there. Oh, I bought a dishwasher. I had gone out and washed dishes for people. After they get through with their dinner, I would go wash their dishes, and they'd pay me. And I saved my money until I got enough to buy a dishwasher. My hands would break out in the dishwater. So I didn't, and my husband was tired of washing dishes. So I called up to see when they were going to deliver it, and he said, well, I'm so busy with TV that I can't tell you for sure. And I said, you need my son. He said, where is he? I told him he's down at high school playing basketball. He went down there and got him and hired him. And the people who worked for him already taught David all they could about television sets. And he worked his way the rest of the way through school servicing television sets. So, and I guess he got kind of sick of them, but when he got married, he had to work. He serviced television sets. He moved to St. Louis with his wife, and I'll tell you in a minute. He sold cemetery lots along with servicing television. But then he finally got a job that would take care of the groceries. He finally had 6 children, so he needed to work. He worked for McDonnell Douglas, and he finally had to take flying lessons because he had to go up the planes and take pictures. And he worked for them for 24 years. And his wife was sick. The doctor told him his wife was not going to get well. The same day, McDonnell Douglas gave him his pink slip. How's that for luck? But after that, he got equipment to clean swimming pools. He'd always come up with these odd jobs that we hadn't thought of. But he managed to survive. His wife didn't. But I don't know. After that, Dorothy was married. Dorothy lived near Chicago and David lived near St. Louis. So whenever we would take a trip, if we went to St. Louis for Christmas, we went to Harvey where Dorothy was for New Year's, or vice versa. That way the noses weren't out of joint. And then my aunt and uncle who lived in Crispin, my aunt got sick and she was in and out of the hospital. Then all of a sudden her husband had heart trouble, he got sick, he was in and out of the hospital. And I would go to the hospital every day, still glad I don't have to go to work. But when Dorothy was getting ready to go to college, she needed money, she wanted new clothes, of course, all girls do. So she went to work for the Chittick family. Mrs. Chittick called me one day and said she needed somebody to wash dishes for her. Would Dorothy do that? And Dorothy said, yes, I can do that. I don't know how hard she worked, but she stayed there all summer. And when she got ready to go to school, she was going to Carbondale. She said, Mother, you ought to go wash her dishes for her. You'd like her. Of course, I had known her ever since she'd been in Paris, so maybe I would like her. And I'd known Dr. Chittick all my life because their office was across the street from my father's barber shop. So there were no strangers around in Paris then. I had known practically everybody. One time I got a job taking census, and I knocked on about 3/4 of the houses in Paris, knocked on their doors, got their information, and I found out how many nice people there were in Paris. That was a fun job because I got to meet a lot of people that I'd never heard of before. And I'm still living in Paris, but I was still working for the Chitticks because Mrs. Chittick and I like to do the same things like knit, crochet, sew, and cook. And she'd call me up sometime and say, I'm cooking so-and-so, why don't you come out and share it with me? And I did. And then I got to travel with them. I got out of Paris. Every once in a while, we went to the East Coast. When she died, we were planning to go to wherever the blossoms are, which Carolina. Geography was always my first subject. next to history. I couldn't see any sense. I never heard the word history until I was in the 5th grade. When I got my report card, it had a nice red F next to it. I was only interested in arithmetic and spelling. I was a good speller. I don't know whether I ought to tell this or not. I qualified for the spelling contest. And then the teacher stood up in front of us, and she had tears running down her face. Says, Elsie Jane can't go to the spelling contest because they don't let Negroes go. And so I had one more test I had to take to be really qualified. So I came to some long word that I think I knew how to spell, but I only spelled the first 3 letters. That way I didn't have to tell my father that they didn't let me go, because he would have had a fit. But I got through school. I got through my father. My mother died when I was a freshman in high school. My father was in an accident when I was a sophomore in high school. And he was in the hospital for 6 months. And then he came home and had to stay in bed for 6 months. So I had to drop out of school again and stay home and take care of him. But I learned a lot of things that time too. People came to the door with things I didn't even know I needed. I did not have to ask for anything. The community nurse came every other day for 6 months. She taught me a lot of things. She didn't teach me how to cook, though. And all the time I was in high school, I was hungry. We had food, but I didn't know what to do with it. And I would get a sandwich for lunch. And then I would go to the store and get an orange, and they had some chocolate flavored yeast tablets that were supposed to fill you up or make you healthy or something. And if it was chocolate, I liked it. So I usually spent 3 cents to get that chocolate yeast bar after I ate my sandwich. And then when I was younger, nobody had radios except businesses downtown. My father liked prize fights, and he would take my sister and I downtown at night so he could listen to the radio in the Paris Daily News office. They had everybody stood out on the street and listened. There was Gene Tooney and Jack Dempsey, I think. And after we got a radio, I was supposed to stay up late at night and listen to the fights so I could tell my father who won and what happened. I hate prize fights. But downtown was interesting. There were stores all around the square, and I could go to all these stores. They had a bookstore downtown. It was one of my favorite places because they sold candy. One day I went in there to get a candy bar, and it was a caramel bar, which is why I don't have any teeth, I expect. But Mrs. Kimball was working in there. And that's where I first saw Carolyn. She let Carolyn go get my candy for me that day. And she was just as little, just as big as she is now. I don't know anything else that's interesting.
I have something I'd like, you can explain.
Microphone.
I'm sorry, I forgot. I don't know that, most of you know that Elsie's a pianist. She played the piano at church for 40 years. That's before she joined First Christian Church. Right?
I swore I'd never touch another church piano again. But I played once for Linda and somebody to sing. I just don't think I missed any notes. My knees were still shaking. Moko Hens and I took piano lessons at the same time from the same teacher. She would tell me how great Moke was. She said, Moke is going to be a great pianist, but you're not. But she wanted me to keep on because I still had rheumatism in my hands, and I still have it. But that was the reason I kept playing, because she says as long as you will play the piano, even practice scales every day, your hands are not going to quit working. And they didn't. It's just now they're getting kind of lazy. I drop things a lot. But Miss Bishop was so interesting. She said, you are not going to be a great pianist, but you might as well keep on taking lessons. And she went someplace every summer to school to learn something new. And then she would come back and explain it to me, what she had done. She was interested in flowers. She would give me plants to plant in my yard. She would tell me all these things that she had learned. And we turned out to be real good friends.
She's talking about Catherine Bishop.
That's what I was gonna ask.
That taught so many of us. I think she probably gave up on me, but she, I know Julie Lund took from her. Did you, Carolyn?
No, she gave me a metronome to help me with my flute because I couldn't count music. I have no musical ability. And she knew I was having trouble with my flute and she loaned me a metronome.
I took one.
Catherine
Larry
had-
took from her,
We
Mary.
did.
Larry took from
We
her.
did, both of us.
Yeah, I did.
Catherine Bishop lived where the, I've forgotten the name of the
Baptist.
building, but it
Baptist
had
Wing.
Baptist Church, where she and her sister Lucy had a little house there.
We'd be interested in experiences of persecution or exclusion.
And she doesn't really like singing. Mike wants to hear about persecution or exclusion. Mike wants to hear about things that happen to you, about persecution or exclusion.
Well, the worst was when I didn't get to the spelling contest. I failed. I could have won that contest, I expect. Because I could spell a word. If you pronounced it right, I could always spell it. I can't do it now, but I don't need to.
That's my motto.
I know that she was on the church board in 1985, but does she remember when she started here?
Talk about Grace AME and Second Baptist Church and why you decided to come here instead of someplace else.
Oh, we had a church, we had two black churches, the Second Baptist Church and the Grace AME. I think Grace AME is still standing. Second Baptist was on the corner of Washington and Jefferson. And we had lived within a half block of that church when I was 3 years old. We moved to Washington Street. I was born on Elm Street. We moved when I was 3 to 417 West Washington Street. And I could go to church, go to Sunday school by myself. I did not have to cross any streets. And that's where I usually took my dolls to play with. I sat on the church steps, so Sunday, they had Sunday school in the afternoon, and I could go to Sunday school by myself. They had 2 church services, one in the morning and one at night. Every church had service at night until they invented television. And we had celebrated our 100th anniversary, but most of our members were old and they were dying. If they weren't dead, they weren't able to come to church. We got down to 5 members and we had to close the doors. The school board bought the lot. And I had a job by then, because my father was no longer around, tell me I couldn't go to work. But I needed a church, so I went to every church. I've been to most churches in town, but I looked in the paper to see who's going to sing the solo this Sunday, and if I wanted to hear them sing, I'd go to that church. But Reverend Faust had come to town, Mary Ellen and I don't know how we got to be friends, someplace
Was
we
it Churchwomen United?
probably. And they kept calling me up and invite me to church. Moke would call me up and tell me what was going on in church. If they were having a special music program, I got to go to the first Bells concert because he called and told me they were going to have it. So I decided if I'm going to join a church, I think I'd better join that one. Besides, they've done a good job of getting Moke on the right track. So,
Moke Owens was our organist for many years while he was able. And it was, I think Kathy took over from Moke, didn't she? I think. I know that Moke, of course, had been a concert pianist and had never played an organ until he came to First Christian Church. And he would just sit up there during prayers and he'd play things, and it was absolutely beautiful. All of this was just in his head. He would just compose as he played. Yes, David?
Can you explain about the interurban?
Can you talk about the interurban? Can you talk about the interurban train?
oh, every hour on the hour, that interurban passed the corner of Wood and High Street. If I wanted to go to Terre Haute, I could catch the interurban right there. Sometimes I think I would catch it and ride to the station, which was on East Washington Street. But I used to ride the streetcar. I've been to every school in town except St. Mary's, lived in the same house. But Mayo burned when I was in the 7th grade, and they scattered us out everywhere. And I went to Vance School, so I would go to the square and catch the streetcar for 5 cents and ride to Vance School. Now, I'm going to sit on my hands. One morning it was cold and snowy, and I stood on that corner and the streetcar didn't come. It had burned up in the night. We've had some terrible fires between our house and the square. Our house we lived. My father bought that house so I could go to Mayo School. But I went to Mayo School for the first 4 grades, and they didn't have 5th and 6th, so I went to 2 or 3 schools until they decided where to leave me for 5th and 6th. And then I was back to Mayo for 7th grade. And at the end of the first semester, we supposed to get our report cards. And the next morning when I woke up, I don't know what month it was, but it must have been cold. And the school had burned. And the only thing, as I said, geography is my poor subject. That's the only book I didn't burn.
Talk about Hotel France.
Oh, I did get a job when I graduated from high school. I got to run the elevator at Hotel France, and I was there for 3 years. For first 2 years, I got $5 a week, and then I got a raise to $7.50. I think we got a new manager. In the meantime, Ben Logan owned the hotel, and he and his brother-in-law got in a fight, and Ben got killed. They invited us to his funeral, but I didn't go. But let's see, it was Art Reese's father, Art Reese Sr., killed Ben Reese. And that was exciting. I wasn't at the hotel. My cousin worked there when Dillinger stayed there one night. But I was there when there was a fire across the street from the hotel, and we had to wake up everybody and tell them to move their cars out of the Chevrolet garage that was across the street. It was in the building that Janssens took over, that they just tore down, I think.
Yeah. Who stayed at the hotel? Who lived at the hotel then?
There were older people. If they were widows and didn't have anybody to fire their furnace, they'd move into the hotel in the winter time.
What kind of furnace? What kind of furnace? What kind of furnace was it?
Oh, they had coal furnaces with stokers, and they filled the stokers. A lot of teenage boys had jobs filling stokers. But then there was a Miss Marie McKinley that had a corner apartment in the hotel, and I thought of her because we hadn't got everything unpacked at my house since I moved. And she had tried to move everything she owned in there, and she had to turn the light on with the yardstick. I could see her from the elevator, because the elevator was the end of the hall, right across from her apartment. And I usually waited for those people, the older people, to make sure they got in. And then when they came out, were going out someplace, I had to make sure the petticoats weren't showing. And there were a lot of people there. One lady had a dog. I don't remember who, I know who she was, Miss Jean Brown. She had, it was a little dog, a poodle. It wasn't a chihuahua, it was bigger than that. And she had to take the dog out every once in a while. And then there were strawberry people who came in strawberry season. This used to be, I guess, they considered themselves the strawberry capital of Illinois. And during strawberry season, we had a house full. One night, what was it, the Anti-Thief Association or something brought a goat in and took it up on the elevator. That was thrilling, you know.
Did you start smoking when you were? You said something about cigarettes in the elevator and the traveling man, you told me.
I don't know.
You used your cigarettes.
Don, you're making up stories.
Don, you're making up stories, Don.
I couldn't do it. That's okay, go ahead.
I don't remember that one. I worked at hotel for 3 years.
Dorothy, what else have you
We didn't have a telephone at home, so my boyfriend could call me at the hotel. The elevator was right across the hall from the telephone.
Donna, ask Grandma to talk about when she went to work for the Department of Aging.
Oh, yeah. You worked for the Department of Aging and you ended up going to the White House. Tell the whole thing.
I didn't get, yeah, I got my White House, or I got to it anyway. It was at the time they were having that scandal about the man shredding the wrong papers, or the papers they didn't want. Somebody wanted to see it. I forgot from that story who he was, but we were restricted to where we could go because there was so many people trying to get in there to see him.
What did you do when you worked for the Department of Aging?
When I worked for the Department of Aging, I listened to a lot of speeches. I got to take a lot of trips. We got to learn what seniors needed. After they passed the Older American Act, then they started deciding that maybe we ought not to have to just fold up and die. One senator had said when they get to be 65 and retire, just let them die, which set the country on fire. Nobody agreed with him, fortunately, and they started all these boards and committees to think of what seniors needed. I was one of the people hired to go around door to door and see if there was a senior there, what did they think they needed. Most of them said more money. But at the time, there were not enough nursing homes. There was Medicare, but you had to send in your own bills to get reimbursed by Medicare. And when they decided that the doctor's office could take care of the bills and send in the Medicare, the doctors put up a big hullabaloo because that meant they had to hire more help because they had to fill out all these papers. And if you're on Medicare, you know there's a lot of people that get a lot of papers. I'm one of them. But Medicare, if it were not for Medicare, I told somebody I don't think I'd still be alive because I've been sick most of my life. There's been something the matter with me. I decided one day, and I was in the doctor's office, that was the first time I'd been able to stay out of the doctor's office for more than 6 months. Because I had asthma when I was little, I had arthritis when I was bigger, and I still had the arthritis. Now I'm deaf, and I'm losing my eyesight. So Medicare has been real good to me because I don't have to worry about can I afford to go to the doctor to get this taken care of. All I do is go.
Yeah, that's
And they take good care of me.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Darla.
What event in her generation, in her life, has affected her the most? I know that someone asked us, David and I, this, and at the time, it was Kennedy's assassination that affected us the most. Now, I think it would be 9/11, especially for the, that's what I'm asking.
What event in your life?
So what about her?
What event in your life has affected you the most? Historical event has affected you the most?
It's history, she doesn't want to.
History.
She doesn't do history.
World War I,
Affected you the most?
because I was 3 years old when the World War I ended, and I remember the celebration, how happy everybody was. My mother was going up the street by, well, Goldenberg Yard and Helfrich's were up Washington, West Washington Street, and we got up that far. There were a lot of people, and my mother was throwing me up in the air because I wasn't very big then, and I said, "What is everybody making so much noise for?" And she said, "Because the war is over." And my father had not had to go because he was too old, and we didn't have anybody else. Well, my uncles had gone, and then when they came back, I was excited, of course. But the thing that affected me most was that there were so many men with one leg, and then if your leg was injured, they bend it up, your knee would be propped up, and maybe your foot would be dragging behind you, but you'd have this wooden knee on. That, I think, made me know that war was not to be desired. And I have a hard time when anybody is trying to start a war or we ought to go fight, and I think they're crazy. And then there were so many children whose fathers, they had stepfathers, and their father's last name wasn't the same as theirs in school. It was confusing. Because maybe I knew the whole family, and I wondered they had all these different names.
Two or three of the best inventions since she's been alive.
What are the 3 best inventions since you've been alive? Somebody wants to know, what are the 3 best inventions in your lifetime? 3 best inventions.
Kleenex.
That's 1, 2 more.
No, I don't know. I always say Kleenex because my nose ran all the way. And they hadn't invented it. I had to use my father's handkerchiefs because they're big. And I had to carry one in my hand to school all the time. And my nose was always dripping or stopped up. And I'd be so embarrassed. And I was taller. I was the tallest girl in Paris High School when I was a freshman. And that meant my stockings weren't long enough. We wore stockings to school. You didn't wear socks. And my skirts were too short. And there'd be a gap between my stockings and my skirt. And that would embarrass me because nobody else was like that. And then one year I didn't have any clothes. You didn't ask about the embarrassment, but I had to wear the same dress for a whole year, all winter. And that bothered me because people would ask me, when are you going to change clothes? But they were washable. They weren't supposed to be washed, but they were washable. They couldn't send them to the cleaners. The Depression started the same year my mother died, but it hadn't started when she died. But everybody, there was people on the corner selling pencils. Maybe war was one of my worst inventions, you suppose, or depression. But people were knocking on your back door asking for food. And my mother always fed them. Of course, after my mother wasn't there, nobody went to the back door. We decided they'd mark the houses where they could get food, because we had a lot of different people knocking on our door. And my mother always fed them.
How many years were you an election judge, and why did you start that?
I started it because whoever was supposed to go didn't. I was still working for Chittix, and Bill came in and said, could you do me a favor and take her place? And so I got there with no knowledge of what to do. They stuck all these notes, papers in my face. And when I get to 199, somehow or other, I think it's 299, I couldn't number them straight. But I started after Watergate, I think. I don't know when I quit. But I quit because I was getting crippled. And every time I stood up to stretch, everybody stood up to help me. I was in too much trouble, and I couldn't get there at 6 o'clock in the morning. And so I quit. I was going to quit the day my husband went to the nursing home, or the day he got sick, the year he got sick. And he said, you better hold on to that. I don't know whether he thought I needed the money, which I was not going to get until next year. But anyhow, when they put him in the nursing home finally, I was in the polling place, being an election judge.
Any other questions? How old was Grandma when she made her first prank phone call?
How old were you when you made your first prank call? One of the troublemakers wants to know. Surely not.
How old was I when what?
You made your first prank phone call.
I don't know.
You were 99. Susan and I were there when you did it.
It was not his fault.
Not going to Tom asking if refrigerator's running.
Yeah.
A stranger too. I don't know whether I even met the man yet. Somebody, they were having a game to church on the corner that used to, that's been a church for a long time. And they had lots of young people's things going on. And one night, somebody called me up, wanted to know if my refrigerator was running. And I sort of quibbled, asked what they wanted to know for. They said, well, you better go look. And poor dumb me, I went and looked. It finally soaked in what they were doing.
What was your favorite thing to do for fun when you were little? We know about when you were old.
What was your favorite thing to do when you were little?
Just for fun.
Just for fun. What was your favorite thing to do when you were little?
Ride my bicycle till somebody almost hit me one day. I had a red bicycle. It was bigger than anybody else's because my legs were longer than anybody else's. My father had promised me that when I was 10 years old, he'd get me a bicycle because I'd been asking for one for a long time. When I was 10 years old, he didn't get my bicycle. And when I was coming up to 11, I heard my mother tell him, you'd better get that bicycle because she'll know you don't keep your word. And the next day I had a beautiful red bicycle. But I was coming down the hill one day on it, and somebody almost hit me. I don't know how it happened. I must have swerved and got out in the street. But then, when I was in the 8th grade, I think, somebody gave my parents gave my bicycle to somebody else because I was getting too big. It wasn't ladylike to ride a bicycle. But Fred Wolf would always put air in my tires. I do not know yet how to put air in a tire. And when I learned to drive, there was a young man came to town, and he was not married. He came to work in a restaurant here, and he had a Model A Ford, if you can remember that far back. And I said something about I wish I could drive. He said, well, I'll teach you. And he did. Every night he'd come to my house before dark, and we'd go to Terre Haute. I would have to drive all the way till we got to the edge of town. He turned the car around so I could drive it back. And then it got dark. I didn't want. I learned to drive in the dark, but we didn't have a car then. So, but I have driven miles and miles and miles, and I've never been out and had trouble with a car, but there was a telephone as near as that wall over there. And David wanted to know what I was going to do when I started working for Green Thumb. I didn't drive an awful lot. My husband liked to drive, and I just let him. He'd let me drive at twilight. He didn't like, when the sun went down, he didn't want to drive. If we were on a trip, I'd have to drive until it got real dark.
I keep waiting to see her face on the Smucker's jar. Nobody's ever sent her picture in.
I want to see your face on a jar of Smucker's jam or jelly. I want you to be a model for Smucker's jam or jelly.
Big orange marmalade.
What's the best thing about having a granddaughter?
She's got she's only got
Let's
one
see,
son.
who came first? Denise came first and stayed.
Yeah, the Elsie Jackson Home for Unwed Grandchildren. Yes.
I don't know how long she was. She used my address when she went to college. I don't remember what year that was. But
1980.
Hmm?
She went to college in 1980 for the bachelor's. I don't know about the master's and when she got her doctorate. I think Dorothy Louise has a question. No? No? You have them written down?
I've got a lot of questions, but a lot of them have been answered already. What do you remember about your grandparents?
Oh, that's a good one. What do you remember about your grandparents?
I remember my grandfather was the only person who ever encouraged me to talk. They could tell me I was talking too much. And he asked me a question that would have an answer maybe this long. My grandmother would come to visit us. My grandmother played a guitar. She carried that guitar with her everywhere she went. When she came to Paris, she would bring the guitar and we'd sit around and sing. But she was superstitious, and it was bad luck to travel on Friday. So if she had come on Monday, she had to go home on Thursday, because grandfather was going to be home on Saturday. and she couldn't travel on, because it was bad luck, she couldn't travel on Friday. She had a lot of superstitions that I thought were nutty, especially since that would make her go home a day earlier than I thought she had to. But let me tell you how we traveled. When we got ready to visit my grandmother, she lived in Taylorsville, Illinois, and we would call the transfer company to come and get our trunk, because we were packing the trunk to put our clothes in, and he would take it to the station and probably checked it, I don't know. And then when we got to Taylorsville, he would take it. Somebody would meet us, some moving company, and they'd take the trunk to my grandmother's house. My grandmother had what we thought was a funny house. The kitchen was in the basement, but it was a high ceiling basement, and then the rest of the house was upstairs. She had a Maytag washing machine that we thought was so interesting, because my mother didn't have a washing machine. My father wanted to buy her one, and she said, no, I don't need it. And she washed clothes on the washboard. As soon as she died, my father bought a washing machine. So I never had the pleasure of doing laundry on the washboard. But it was a square machine with wringer on top.
Right.
And had a cylinder inside that held the clothes, and the water was down beneath it, I think. And we had a kitchen cabinet that had an accordion door, and my mother would stack the lunch dishes and put them behind this accordion door in the cabinet so our kitchen looked nice and neat. And Daisy and I had to wash the dishes when we came home from school. And then we could go play after we washed dishes.
What did you play? I mean, the kids today have all the electronics and the
A lot
games.
of times we'd go back to the schoolyard and play, but then after school, we could all meet in the schoolyard, all the girls. But look, the boys caught on, and they came and they started harassing us. I never did tell my mother why I quit going to the schoolyard, but I didn't go back there to play anymore. And then the bad thing, I don't know if it's bad or not, these boys grew up. I looked up in church one day and I was sitting next to one of them. I swore I'd never speak to him again.
Donna, ask her what games they played.
What games did you play when you were a little girl?
Oh, we played tag, we played the jacks, we played,
Jacks, yeah.
we had some kind of game that you had to choose sides, and I never got chosen because I was clumsy. You had to run. If they ran out of people, they might let me play. By the time I got to Mayo, when I was in the lower grades, Louise' uncle was my best friend. She would teach me how to play all the games, whatever games they would have. I got pretty good at jacks. I hadn't thought about it till now. But I could pick them up no matter how crippled my hands were. My hands didn't do bad at all. If I kept playing the piano, my hands kept working. And then there was something else we played. We jumped rope, and when I was growing up, I was going to have 3 children when I got married, because we didn't have a tool at our house, and we had to tie the end of the rope to a tree. But I didn't ever get the third one.
So I was talking with Dorothy about how the black churches wear the hats and they're extremely dressed up and everything. In fact, we got to talking and she said she wore hats to school also. Is that still, did they wear hats to school or dresses and?
What did you wear to school? Did you have to wear hats to school like on
We,
Sunday?
we had to wear hats to school. We wore hats everywhere we went. And if it got hot, you still had to wear the hat. You could not wear socks. You dressed, and girls could not wear pants. There was one girl that wore pants. We never figured out why, but her name was Mary, but she always had on overalls. And she was in my class all the time. I started school with
We couldn't wear pants.
lots of different
Tell about the time you got locked into school at lunchtime.
Oh, I had to play for the kids to march out. And when I got through playing, Edna Burton was a friend who always waited for me. We got down to the front door and it was locked. Nobody ever told us how to open it if it was locked. And so we stayed there during the lunch hour till the teacher came back. And Miss Fry was my teacher, Ruth Fry. And she'd tell that every Sunday at church that I got locked in, but it had a bar on it that you could push down and get out, but nobody had ever told me that. And I belonged to the generation that didn't ask questions. You should be seen and not heard. So I missed learning a lot of things that my kids know or knew, my grandchildren knew. I got a 4-year-old great-grandchild, probably knows more now than I knew when I was in the 6th grade.
She's a she's your great-great-granddaughter.
Yeah.
You left the grade out.
Dorothy, another?
Got another question?
What have you done in your life that you're most proud of?
What have you done in your life that you're most proud of?
No, this was raised Dorothy and not Kelly.
She didn't kill her daughter.
Proud of that too.
She went through the usual teenage. And I didn't have any really younger brothers and sisters. My sister was 1.5 years younger than I was, so we were practically the same age. And I had not had any little children, the neighbors' children maybe. I had Dorothy Kaufman, if you remember her, Dorothy. She was born next door to me. Bob Owen's sister lived next door, his older sister. Their grandmother lived next door to me. I've had marvelous neighbors all my life. All the neighbors have been good to me. Usually I had a black neighbor on one side and a white one on one side, and I couldn't tell you the difference. They both were good. But they always looked after us. They made sure nobody got us. And then we had the Ewings on the corner, and there was finally 3 of them. And I was so thrilled one day that it's an organization pretty much like this one, and I used to go, and the Ewings used to go, and there was, the oldest one was named Martha, and she had a friend that worked with her son worked for Stuart Harder. What did Dad make all them? And they were both maybe 90 years old, and somebody asked them a question, and they sang a duet. Neither one of them could carry a tune, but it didn't bother them. But they were lots of fun. So maybe I've had good examples of older people all my life. The Ewings had lived on Wood Street longer than we did. We lived there from 1921. I don't know what other famous neighbors we had.
I remember
I
going
thought
to a
one time
birthday.
it was Barbara's block, but Shirley Tucker lived on the corner. We lived in the middle of the block. There was Mr. Berkman lived behind us. He had a barber shop about 2 doors from my father. And then there was another barber lived where, oh, he was Dick Spun's father-in-law. I don't remember what his name is.
Paxley?
Hmm?
Paxley?
I don't, yeah. No, he was not his father-in-law, but, because he couldn't have been Lyndon's father. I don't know, Dick Spung lived around the corner. And this barber lived where Cleo Glenker's grandmother had lived there when we moved there, next to Sims's. Sims's had the oldest house in the block, and it's still standing. It was at that time a 3-room house with bare floors, and Mrs. Doris Sims was Russell's mother. She mopped that floor every day, and of course it was turning white. They had a round table that sat in the dining room, in the kitchen door. It had combination kitchen and dining room, and you could watch Mr. Sims. Mr. Sims was a plumber, and he died right after my mother. But that house, and then next house east was where Cleo's grandmother lived. Her name was Mrs. Everett. They said she wasn't very friendly, but I don't think we ever had any trouble with her, because we'd ride tricycles down to her. She had a step past her house. And then there have been people moved in there that had 3 boys that played with my children. And one of them was just 2 years old. And he was always walking up and down the street. He'd follow me home, and nobody ever locked their doors then. And we had watermelon for lunch, and then I went to take my father to work, I think. And when I came back, this little boy had been in my house and gotten these 2 or 3. He got himself a piece of watermelon. So I decided, after that, I'd take him with me.
Donna, ask her if she ever went down Wood Street when there was a lot of snow and they shut the street off, and so they let the kids go down on their sleds. She remembers doing that.
Did you ever get a chance to go down Wood Street when it was snowy and they closed the street and let the kids
Oh,
go down on the
yes.
sleds?
Oh, yes. That was more fun. And then as we got to be teenagers, Bob Owen's father would build us a bobsled, and tie it to, he had a Model T Ford, and he would tie it to the back of his car. And he'd take us up and down. I've also been, I shouldn't tell this, I guess. We would, bunch of teenagers drove around Neo's school in the snow one night. I didn't do that. But I happened to be in the car. And so we drove all the way around Mayo School. Well, it must have been the old Mayo, because it was straight up and down.
Yes, it was where there were trees and the front part wasn't there.
But Donald would tie anything.
You know, we could keep this going for probably hours because we have a long run. But we're gonna have to come to a close. Does anybody wanna have a question that has to be answered? Kathy does.
Okay, I went to a birthday party of yours a few years back, not too many, in Chicago, and the jazz band leader said to you, so what do you think the reason is, or just what have you done in your life to keep yourself alive as long as you have? And I want to know if you remember the answer or if you got a different answer.
She's talking about your 101st birthday party that was held in a place that we won't mention. But the band leader wanted to know how you lived so long, and Kathy wants to know what your advice on that is today.
I don't know. You have a chronic ailment and you have to go to the doctor all the time.
And you know what you told the band leader?
What did she tell the band leader?
She told the band leader, I'm just not ready to go yet.
She says you told the band leader you're just not ready to go yet.
Huh?
You told the band leader that you lived so long because you weren't ready to go yet.
That's part of it. Reverend Oliver asked me one time if I expected to go to heaven. He teaches in Sunday school. I said I hadn't worried about going to heaven. I'm worried about how to stay alive. I never, so many people I knew had savings accounts to pay for their funerals. And I said, nobody's going to let me stay on top of the ground after you die. They're going to get rid of you somehow. So I have made no funeral plans. I may die tomorrow, but I will not say I've got to get ready to die.
How would you like to be remembered after you die?
How would you like to be remembered after you die?
That I didn't hurt anybody's feelings. Because mine has been hurt a lot.
I want her to know how privileged we all feel to have known her.
Yes.
I must be known how privileged we all feel to have known her. But I feel like it's a privilege to be alive and to know people. And I'm speaking to everybody I know. I don't have any enemies that I can't stand to be around.
That's good. Good, Donna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're giving you a standing ovation.
Oh.